some of my pomegranates are starting to ripen. And if you ask me, they are one of the 2 best fruit trees you can include in your home orchard here in southern Arizona. And that's because they don't mind the sunshine. In fact, the more the better. And they are just absolutely beautiful. If you're looking for a no-fuss tree that's going to add beauty and productivity to your home garden, pomegranates are one of my top picks. Welcome back to So Arizona, and today, if you couldn't tell from that introduction, we are talking about pomegranates. Pomegranates are one of my favorite fruits to grow in the desert, and that's because they are not going to require you to take out a second mortgage on your house to water them. I don't have to protect this tree with shade cloth, and I don't have to fuss with this tree very much. Apart from trimming out some of the dead or broken branches from the wintertime, I really don't prune this tree at all. And I like to grow my trees as shrubs, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's talk about all of the basics of pomegranate trees and why you should grow some in your desert garden too. It's thought that pomegranates originated in Persia, which is modern-day Iran. They were brought to the North American continent by the Spanish as the Spanish were establishing missions in Mexico, Arizona, and California. And they found out pretty quickly how well pomegranates perform in our hot and arid conditions here in southern Arizona. They don't mind our alkaline soils, and they need a very low number of chill hours as compared with other fruit varieties. Chill hours are the number of hours during the winter time that is required for fruit trees to be able to enter dormancy and then to break dormancy in the spring and produce flowers and fruit. Pomegranates need just 100 to 250 chill hours, which is very low when you consider that there are certain apple trees that are grown in the far north that can require hundreds of hours of chill. So pomegranates are a really great choice when you are living in a pretty warm climate as we do here in southern Arizona. When I moved to this property, one of the first things I did was to plant more pomegranates. Now the pomegranate tree behind me is a well-established and much bigger pomegranate than the rest of my pomegranate trees, and that's because it was already here, planted by the previous owner. Now I don't know what variety it is because it was not marked or labeled, and so I can only guess. It's a white pomegranate, so it could be a Kino Heritage or it could be a white Sonoran pomegranate, but I really have no way of knowing. So either way, it's a really delicious pomegranate and it produces a ton of fruit, usually this time of year. So pomegranates will produce fruit between August and sometimes November, depending on the variety. This tree will always start to ripen its fruit in mid to late August, which is really nice because I get fruit from that tree, and then the other tree varieties that I have planted will start to produce after that. Having different varieties of pomegranates is a great way to stagger the harvest so that you don't get all of them ripening at the same time. So I get to enjoy these white pomegranates, and a little later in the fall I will start harvesting some of my red pomegranates. I've got some wonderful pomegranates and some Eversweet pomegranates, and those are both a red variety, and they ripen in October usually. You can grow pomegranates in the traditional way with plenty of room to spread out and grow, and if you do it that way, then you're going to want to plant them about 20 feet apart. I chose to grow pomegranates as a hedge, and if you grow pomegranates as a hedge, then you want to space them 6 to 10 feet apart. I spaced my pomegranates about 8 feet apart, and that seems to be doing really well. The bigger ones are starting to just barely touch, but they have plenty of room to spread out and grow. Since I have a wall behind them, I don't want to put them right up against the wall because that would flatten one side and really crowd those branches on that side, and it would be very hard to harvest fruit if I couldn't get around the pomegranates on that side. So I've got them about 4 feet off the wall and then about 8 feet apart from one another. Like I said, you can choose to plant them 6 to 10 feet apart if you're doing a hedge. I love the idea of a pomegranate hedge because it covers up the wall and it adds a lot of beauty to the garden. In the spring, I get beautiful coral colored blooms, and in the fall, the leaves all turn a beautiful golden color. I also really like it that it provides some privacy from the neighbors. I love my neighbors, they're very nice, but I really like having a bit of an oasis in the garden so that I feel like I'm in my own private space. However you choose to grow pomegranates though, just remember that they don't require a lot of pruning. Pomegranates will grow as a multi-branched tree. Really, they look more shrubby than tree-like. You could prune them if you choose to by selecting a few just central trunks and then trimming the branches out from underneath it. But you can also just let them kind of take their natural shrub shape. And that's what I've done. And I really like it that way. I think it looks super natural. It provides shelter and nesting spots for birds. And I just think that the natural look is really beautiful. Pomegranates will grow 10 to 12 feet tall, so keep that in mind as you're choosing a spot in your yard for them. I do not fertilize my trees. I will provide a little bit of mulch. Sometimes I'll throw a little bit of compost down if I have extra, but honestly, they kind of fend for themselves, and that is the way I like it. I have plenty of things in my garden that are going to require a lot of babysitting and a lot more care, so it's really nice to have a productive tree that kind of takes care of itself. I water these pomegranate trees 1 time per week during the summer for an hour. Now, this is dependent upon your soil. I have very loamy soil, so that tends to hold the moisture quite a bit better than just sand. I know that in the Tucson area and even in Phoenix, there are a lot of yards and gardens that have very sandy soil. You could also have clay soil. So the difference with those two is that clay will hold the water and it drains very poorly. So you need to water your trees and your plants that you grow in a clay soil much less than you do in a sandy soil. Sandy soil will just let that water run right through it. It doesn't hold on to it, and it has very little organic matter. Loamy soil, which is what I have, is a mix of silt and sand and clay, and it holds on to the water fairly well. If you're trying to establish a watering routine, you want to just keep an eye out and monitor it and make sure that you're watering to a depth of about 2 to 3 feet. So that will establish very robust root systems that will go down in search of water and will establish much more deeply and therefore be much more resilient to drought and heat than if you were just giving it a little bit of surface water now and then, or just in very small amounts or for very small amounts of time. When it comes to adjusting the irrigation during other seasons of the year, whether it be early spring or during the winter, you want to reduce the frequency, not the duration of time that you're irrigating. So for me, if I'm irrigating for an hour 1 time per week during the summertime, in the late fall when it's starting to cool down, I might knock that back to once every 2 weeks, but still for 1 hour. And in the wintertime, I may water 1 time per month, still for an hour. So throughout the seasons, I'm reducing the frequency at which I'm irrigating, but never the duration of time. There are many different kinds of pomegranates that you can choose from. It's really about your taste, whether you like the white or the red. They come from white to pink to red in color, and they all have a little bit different flavor, and they also will ripen at different times. Here in our region in southern Arizona, the Wonderful, the Eversweet, the Parfianca, the Kino Heritage White, and the Sonoran White are all really good performers. Now, this is really a choose your own adventure. You get to decide which kind you want and when you want those pomegranates to ripen. So that is up to you. Now, when it comes to harvesting the pomegranates, sometimes people have a hard time knowing when the right time is. This can be a little bit tricky because when your peaches are ripe, you can smell those ripe peaches. If your apples are ripe, generally speaking, they will put off a really nice, ripe, fresh apple aroma as well. But pomegranates don't do that. So you have to rely on a few other things to know when it's time to pick your pomegranates. The first one has to do with the variety, and that is timing. So from experience, I know that my white pomegranate tree right here becomes ripe around mid-August to late August. And so I start checking for all of the other signs around this time. I may even steal a fruit now and then just to see see if they are getting ready. The next thing is color. So some pomegranates will change color just slightly based upon the time of year and whether or not they're approaching ripeness. This white pomegranate is usually a nice green color throughout most of the season, but as it approaches harvest time, it develops a bit of a blush. So I'm not sure if you can see on camera here, but this has kind of a rosy hue to it, and this used to be a nice lime green color. So that is one of the indications. Another indication is the shape. Throughout the season, this pomegranate is perfectly round, but as it approaches harvest time, it starts to flatten out on the sides and develop a more angular shape. So if you can see on here that this side is quite flat and all of the sides are quite flat. So that is another indicator to me that the pomegranate is ready to harvest. And the last thing has a little bit of nuance to it, but it is the sound. So let me see if I can pick this up on my microphone. Can you hear kind of that woody, almost like, not hollow sound, but a little bit of a hollow sound, I suppose. If you've ever picked a watermelon, you can tell the difference between a ripe watermelon and an unripe watermelon because the sound changes just slightly. And that's the same with a pomegranate. So during most of the year, it will have a very dull, very heavy sound. But as it approaches harvest time, it will develop more of a hollow or a woody sound. So you can check all of those things. So timing, color, shape, and sound are all great indicators of when your pomegranate is ready to harvest. When you cut your pomegranate open, you are going to find the arils, which are the juicy, translucent, flesh-colored seeds. And these seeds are edible, so you can just pop the whole thing in your mouth. I like to put my pomegranate fruits on salads. I like to eat them plain. I'll put them on my yogurt, and I even juice them. And I juice them by cutting them in half and then putting them into a juicer that smashes them and just squeezes all the juice out. And that makes a really delicious juice for breakfast or a cocktail or whatever you want to use it for. You can store your pomegranates in a cool place for a couple of months to keep them fresh. I like to put them into my vegetable drawer and my refrigerator, and that works really well. And so that way I have pomegranates to eat right off the tree. I have some to eat in the few weeks in between the time that this tree gets ripe and the next tree gets ripe. So it's a great way to really spread out the harvest and not have to be overwhelmed with pomegranates, because pomegranates are a bit labor intensive to cut open and clean, because you have to clean the white membrane off of them. You have to crack open each side of it and get those seeds out without squishing them. It's a little more labor intensive than just picking a peach or an apple off the tree and biting it and eating it. So I like to spread out the pomegranate joy for myself by putting them in the refrigerator. Pomegranates do not come ripe all at once on the same tree. So when I say that this white pomegranate tree will become ripe in mid to late August, it's a gradual ripening. So what I like to do is come out here every few days and just check on them. And I can see that today I have got quite a few that are ripe. So what I like to do is bring out my pruner so that I don't damage the tree, and I will just cut the stem right at the top of the pomegranate so that it's just got a little nubbin of a stem left. And today I think I'll probably get a dozen or so based upon what it looks like. So I've got my little basket here, and I'm just going to pick away. And if you are picking your pomegranates, you want to make sure that you're checking on them every few days, because you can be sure that the pests and the critters are checking on them as well. And they have a really good sense for when fruits are ripening and when they're at peak eating season. And I'm going to show you how I know that. So this one looks like a really nice pomegranate, right? You can't tell that there's anything wrong with it until I turn it around. And then you can see that's not going to be good eats. And what I can see here is that there has been either a bird or a rat that has been pecking away or chewing away at this pomegranate, and it has caused the skin to be broken, bacteria to get into the fruit, and now rot is setting in. I've actually found pomegranates on the trees and they're hanging and they look beautiful this way, but as soon as I pick them, I realize the whole back half is missing or else completely eaten, and the whole thing is just a hollow skin, and that is usually the work of rats. Birds that are looking for food and moisture will peck at pomegranates, and rats will chew into them. And there is one other critter that I loathe that loves the pomegranates too. Leaf-footed bugs may not be common in every part of the country, but they are certainly common here in my garden. And they are called leaf-footed bugs because the bottoms of their legs look like leaves. They have a little flare to them, very fancy, but they are a sap-sucking insect, and they love to get on young fruits and young stems and leaves, and they like to suck the juices out of them. And when they do that, they can introduce a bacteria into the fruit, and that will not be evident to you as you're looking at your fruit on your tree and picking your fruit, because sometimes the outside of that pomegranate will look perfectly healthy, but when you cut into it, you are going to find a dark brown, gloopy, stinky mess. So leaf-footed bugs are definitely something that you want to look out for. If I see leaf-footed bugs on my pomegranate tree, I will usually find them in a little group. I call it a leaf-footed bug posse, and I will bring out a little bucket full of soapy water. What I like to do is just grab the entire stem and I will dunk it down into that soapy water. It will knock off the entire group of leaf-footed bugs in there, and then they'll die from the soapy water. And that is really the best way I have found to treat. So you really need to be keeping an eye on your trees, checking them regularly. It is labor intensive. I have 6 trees in this pomegranate hedge, and so it's definitely a little bit time consuming certain times of the year. There are things that you can do to avoid leaf-footed bugs, at least in high numbers in your yard, and that starts in the fall. As these pomegranates ripen, if there are any fruits that fall to the ground that the other critters have gotten, I don't leave those fruits there, because the leaf-footed bugs will lay eggs in and overwinter in the shells of those pomegranates, and that's because they make a perfect little shelter for them. And so I make sure I come through and I clean up any fallen fruit or rotting fruit, and I throw it away into my garbage can immediately, not into my compost pile. And that way I'm able to at least reduce the numbers of the leaf-footed bugs that are going to come and suck the juices out of my pomegranates and ruin them next season. Okay, so I am going to go and try to harvest as many of the pomegranates that I can today, and we'll see how many I end up with. I've got a hummingbird swooping over my head. I don't know if she has a nest in here or she's just feeling protective. There are a few flowers still on this tree, which is funny. Most of the flowers appear in the spring, and for the most part it's just fruit on this tree now, but there are a few late bloomers, and the hummingbirds and the bees love to have the flowers as a nectar source, so that is really nice. But Mrs. Hummingbird is not happy about me being in her pomegranate tree right now, I can assure you. This is not a favorite job for someone who does not like heights or being on a ladder, but luckily most of the pomegranates are a little bit lower, so I won't have to climb up too far on the ladder to reach them. I actually see one of the leftover shells that one of the critters left me last year, so I can show you just how thoroughly they will harvest from these fruits. If I can get a hold of it. This is why pomegranates really like to hang on to their tree for sure. So this is why I really like to have the pruners, because I don't want to rip up my tree. So let's look at this. All right, so you see this pomegranate? No, you don't, because it is just a shell. And this is a very extreme version of it. I've actually had some that make a perfect little burrow spot in the back where they have chewed into the fruit, and you cannot tell because it's about the size of maybe a quarter or a $half the hole is, and then you pick it and then you see that there are no fruits left for you. Sometimes I do find that if a pomegranate is very ripe, it will just come right off the tree, but then there are other times where it's obviously ripe and it doesn't want to come off. So that's why I have my pruners just in case. You can see this one I had to clip, and this one came right off with a clean stem. So let's go take a look at the pomegranate hedge, and I will talk about all of the different varieties that I have here, at least the ones that I remember. All right, so that is a pretty good amount of pomegranates. I haven't counted them, but this is a pretty big basket, so I'm pleased with that today. You can see that there are still quite a few on the tree. I'm gonna go through and just double check those for sure. There are some in the back that I think I'll have to go around and get because they are hanging over that back wall. But for the most part, I think I have everything that is ready to come off the tree today. So just as a reference, I've got my peach tree and my espalier apple trees, which are in bad need of pruning there. And then my pomegranate hedge starts. So this one is a Josefina. She's not produced any fruit for me yet, but it was found on a ranch near where I live out in Santa Cruz County. So I'm hoping that that one will do really well. And then I've got the big one, the original OG pomegranate tree that was here when I moved in, and that's a white one. And then right next to that is my Eversweet, and you can see that it's got some fruits on it. This is a much younger tree, but it does have some. It's got some way down low. Let's see. It's got some way down low down there, but you can see those are still relatively green and round. I did pick one of those as a test fruit and it wasn't ready yet, but some of them up at the top are starting to develop that blush color that I was talking about. All right, so next to that Eversweet is a myrtle bush that has not taken the hint. I've cut it down twice because it's in a weird spot, but it's back, so I'll just let it bloom. The bees like it, and then I'll cut it back again. So then I've got another one. These two are my wonderful pomegranates, and these are going to be a red pomegranate. And so let's take a look at those fruits. Not quite ready yet. Definitely not angular at all, although they are starting to get that beautiful blush. And then I've got two more down here, and these are really young trees, and I have to admit to you that I do not remember the variety for this. I know that there was a label on these trees, so I'm gonna have to dig around down here and see if I can find it. But this one's a baby tree, and right now it's just got 2 fruits on it this year, but that's okay. I think it's making a good effort, and I appreciate that. So these are my pomegranates. Hopefully they will join hands soon and then the next seasons to come, and that they will create a nice beautiful hedge for me. You can see the big pomegranate and then my second biggest pomegranate right here are almost touching. There's probably 2 feet between them right now, but there won't be for long. And I just love it. Let me see, I'm seeing some blooms up here. So let's see if I can capture those for you. The sun is not good right now. Can you see those red blooms? Can you see these red, do you see these red blooms right here? They are late to the party, so we'll see what they do. But the hummingbird, she's enjoying them quite a bit. All right, I think that is it for me today. Look at all of those luscious fruits that I have picked. I hope that this encourages you to give pomegranates a try in your own garden, and that it will help you know when to harvest them if you're already growing them. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Kara from So Arizona. Until next time, happy gardening.